one of the things that I think I can say after 12 years on our committee is a hardy perennial, is the need for government to become better at contracting. We live in a very fast-changing landscape, and plainly the ability of government to buy in services and do it well is absolutely fundamental. And there's nothing new about government buying from the private sector. After all, I don't suppose that when Victorian schools were being created, they manufactured chalk, they bought it in. And so the idea of our buying things in using taxpayers' money to fulfil public needs is not a strange or a new one.
Today, as part of this conference, we're publishing a new transparency statement setting out some principles that we think all providers in all parts of the economy should try and adhere to. And we're saying actually there's a need for more information to be released, both proactively but also in response to questions. And we think that information needs to be accessible, and ultimately we want to make sure that consumers and customers are in the driving seat, and they should be able to have the information they need to compare and contrast.
So I want to just start with the point that when this government first came into office, our first priorities included transforming the way that we did business. We then promised to end the days of cosy, gold-plated contracts with big suppliers, and instead become a government that could negotiate toughly and that would be determined to get the best value for taxpayer cash. I'm very confident that's the kind of thing you've heard plenty about this morning from Richard Bacon, and he's absolutely right to focus on it. It is something that taxpayers rightly expect of all of us.
Well, of course, what this is a group of soldiers refuelling, and how they acquire their energy, be it diesel fuel for this or the electricity to run a base in Helmand province or something or other, is a very important procurement issue. And of course, it being energy, therefore, has a very strong link to sustainability, because the more that they have to truck all the way across the desert, the more expensive it is, the harder it is, the more effort that's concerned. Therefore, if they can have more efficient ways of creating their energy and using their energy in a more sustainable way, that's going to be better for the operation and for the cost.
But in terms of the importance of general procurement, contracting, working with the private sector, I think it's not just about the numbers here. Certainly there is the austerity programme, and I think you're going to get an awful lot of attention to squeezing these numbers. How do we cut costs? How do we cut margins? How do we get the most out of these contracts? But equally, I think there's the other side of the agenda, and that's the open public services agenda.
Standards are about what good looks like. They're about knowledge, and they therefore have a really powerful role to play in public procurement. Let me be clear right from the outset, standards are not regulations. I am not the Director of Regulations for the UK, I'm the Director of Standards. So I represent the UK internationally on all matters of business and industry standards, not regulation. So regulators use standards alongside regulation to deliver a policy goal. But they are voluntary. It's the European system that we have here. Voluntary, consensus-driven standards. They're an agreement, shared information.
And then of those 30,000, we looked at the vendors and analyzed them and discovered that there were 6,004 vendors that were analyzed within those 30,000. Over 2,500 of them were for 2 invoices or less for the whole year, and almost 2,000 vendors for 1 single invoice for the whole year. That's all we bought from them ever, for less than £50, and we're paying them through a purchase order system.
Why do we need a Social Value Act? Well, from our perspective, it was about supporting local job creation. It was also about market entry for social enterprises and charities. They deliver a lot of services. We think they could deliver more and do it well. It was also about maximising value from public spending. I suppose for many years value has largely meant financial value. From our perspective, that kind of misses out some key bits, social and environmental. And often we can think about how we maximise the social value from that spend better. And actually spending in that way can bring about cross-departmental efficiencies. Many of you work in kind of local government or connected will be familiar with what I believe is called the graph of doom.
So we had this idea that actually we wanted to move quite radically from where we were which was this 6 contracts that was that has been let for a number of years, very much on an input basis, fixed price, convincing the Director General that we needed to take a risk with all of the revenue that was supporting the whole of the BBC by moving to a very different commercial model. That was probably one of the biggest challenges, set aside the actual procurement.